Hari Om, Om Shanti. Greetings to all the spiritual seekers. In today's divine production, let's chant a couple of shlokas having relevance to deceit, gambling. You would not believe that if I say that Lord Krishna was the greatest gambler. Would you believe it? Of course, you must, as he is the creator, maintainer, and annihilator of the cosmos from time to time. There is nothing wrong if he claims or we say that he is the greatest gambler of all. No one exceeds his power in every respect, in his leelas as well. No one did as many pastimes as Lord Krishna did. So, hearing what's the connection between his leelas, his yogamaya shakti, his gambling power, the Kurukshetra war, that Lord siding or chosen to be sided with Pandavas' army in the Kurukshetra war. So there is something in there, in his grand scheme of things, to punish the miscreants and save the sadhujan, the people on the righteous path. Lord Krishna always saved them, always worked for their welfare in all of his incarnations. Basically, we have 10 incarnations of Lord Krishna or Vishnu. In fact, there have been many incarnations of the Almighty. So, the title is Deceit in Mahabharata war. Was deceit used in order to cover the actual truth in deceiving somebody? Yes, of course. Deception was the main cause of all the wars. Did Lord Krishna use deception? Yes, indeed. But Lord Krishna's deception is divine. He did it for a reason. Every time he did it. Before the war, or during the war, after the war. People in general, they also use deceit and a conceit. They actually hide the deceit. Rather, they hide the truth of the deceit in deceiving other people. That's how they achieve their goals most of the times. Who was the main villain of Mahabharata war, that so-called Kurukshetra war? Kauravas' maternal uncle Shakuni was the greatest villain. He was the mastermind of Kurukshetra war. He never hated Pandavas. On the other hand, indeed, he was a bitter enemy of Pitamaha, Bhishma, and Kauravas. Shakuni plotted the following. He wanted to decimate the Kuru dynasty from the face of the earth. He vowed to his father when they were in jail. Let's get this. Why they were in jail? Shakuni's father and all his brothers, they were put in jail on the command of Bhishma Pitamaha in Kandahar, Gandhar region of the country at the time in Dwapara age. Before Gandhari was married to Dhritarashtra, the king of desires, the blind king of desires, always held on to the throne in spite of his inability to rule the country. He held on to it due to moha, due to attachment to the desires, selfish desires rather. So Gandhari was his second wife, meaning Gandhari was first married to a goat, and then the goat was killed. According to, astrology at the time, she was married to a goat, and the goat was killed, and then she was married to Dhritarashtra. Bhishma and others, they did not know this fact. Later, they came to know that Dhritarashtra was the second husband of Gandhari. So he got enraged, and as a punishment, he put Shakuni and his brothers and his father, Saubala, in the jail. And they were given very minimum amount of food to eat. Bhishma rather wanted them to be starved to death in the jail as a punishment, because he was lied about the fact that Gandhari got married to a goat. So many days passed away, and all Shakuni's brothers and his father, everybody was struggling to eat something. They realized that of all the brothers, Shakuni was the best, very clever, crafty. They wanted to have all the meal for himself so that he survives the ordeal in the jail. And they did it that way. Saubala, their father, said, "You must take revenge. Use deceit in a conceited way. Hide the truth under the deception and take vengeance, a poisonous vengeance, on Bhishma Pitamaha and the Kuru dynasty." So when their father died in the jail, he said that, "Use my bones to make dice for your plan to defeat them in such a way that nobody survives." That's how Shakuni actually uses the dice made from the bone of his father, the thigh bone, a magical dice. And Shakuni was an illusionist, very crafty, very clever, very talkative. He could convince anybody of his plots through deception. He always acted as their pure, helping maternal uncle, but he was a thorn by the bedside. Nobody could realize this until the end of the war. Nobody knew his plots. See, his cleverness and his deceit with which he masterminded the Kurukshetra war and got all the Kuru dynasty decimated forever. And no enmity whatsoever towards the Pandavas. This is the main point. See how he could convince the arrogant, angry, greedy, immoral Duryodhan, the prince of desires, never wanted to share even even the part of the kingdom that is equivalent to the end of the needle. A needle point worth of space he did not want to share with his cousins whatsoever. They just wanted 5 villages brokered by Lord Krishna. He was the ambassador to ask for just 5 villages to rule. Duryodhan was very adamant, obstinate, never wanted to share anything, always fell for his uncle's plots. He was thinking that his uncle has been helping to take revenge on Pandavas for no reason, just for his fulfillment of sense organs, gratification of his own senses, for his own selfish ends, to own the entire kingdom at the time. Never listened to his father, our Pitamaha Bhishma, Drona, Kripa, or any other, even Vyas, the greatest Muni at the time, the greatest sage, an incarnation of the Bhagavan, that Almighty Lord. He did not listen to anybody. That's how, in the grand scheme of things, Lord Krishna also uses his deceit in a divine way in order to re-establish dharma on the planet and punish the miscreants like Shakuni, Duryodhan, Dhritarashtra, and all the kings at the time who supported their army in the Kurukshetra war against Pandavas, and himself who served as a charioteer to Arjun, providing all the directions as to how to fight the Kurukshetra war, and then milking the divine wisdom from Srimad Bhagavatam that he preached before the war began. Without Bhagavad Gita, Arjun would not have been convinced to fight the war, as he was completely overwhelmed with grief due to attachment to his Pitamaha, gurus, cousins, uncles, sons, grandsons from the other side. He did not want his hands to be stained with blood. and enjoy ruling the kingdom. However, in the beginning, Arjun was very enthusiastic. He sat on the chariot, and Krishna was the charioteer of the chariot. They all assembled in the Kurukshetra, that is Dharmakshetra, for the war to take place. He was highly enthusiastic to fulfill his vows taken at the time of humiliating, the disrobing Draupadi in front of Pitamaha, Drona, Kripa, Dhritarashtra, all Pandava brothers and Kauravas, Karna. Everybody was watching that humiliation. And as you know, Lord Krishna was the one who heard Draupadi's cries to help her, save her honor. Lord Krishna was the one who extends her sari as Dushasan was disrobing her sari from her body. Finally, he gets exhausted, falls down on the ground in the palace. That's how they give up, dishonoring her further. And then later on, everyone gets the punishment of what they did. So Duryodhan, when he was on the battleground, Kurukshetra war, as he looks at the opposing armies, their own army, Kauravas' army and Pandavas' army, are read face to face in different configurations under their army chiefs. Their main army chief in the beginning was Drona, and the Pandavas' army chief was Drishtadyumna. Drishtadyumna was a disciple, learning all the martial arts from Drona, along with Pandavas and Kauravas, ever since they were like 8 or 10 year old. He learned all the martial arts, but Drishtadyumna was fighting from Pandavas' army. He was the chief of the army, a son of Drupada. He was one of the Mahayodhas at the time, like Karna, Arjuna, Bhima. Of course, other Yodhas of that caliber. Bhishma was also one of the greatest Maharathis, Mahayodha, rather unparalleled one. Another unparalleled Yodha was Karna. So, Mahabharat Yuddha, Kurukshetra war, was full of deceit, and the plots were deceptional all through. All through. Always you have the rules and regulations to do anything, and in the war also you have such things to follow. But you see, when it comes to fighting the actual war, they violate all the rules and regulations of the war. And it happened. It happened many a times. So let's see what As Duryodhan looks at the opposing army under the leadership of Drishtadyumna, he runs to Dronacharya in his surprise and amazement. And also, he was kind of losing his confidence as to how beautifully he, Drishtadyumna, as chief of the army, arrayed their army personnel. He runs to him and says, "Look, you are disciple and you are you are friend's son, Drupada's son, Drishtadyumna. How cleverly he arrayed the army of Pandavas to fight against us." That means in a ridiculous way he was asking, and he was asking him to behold the view of the Pandavas army opposing their army. It's like you taught all the warfare techniques, and now he is waging war against you. Always something goes on, Duryodhan's mind in a deceitful way, in an insulting way. He talks to other people. Pashyaitam Panduputranamacharya Pasyaitainam Pashyaitam Panduputranamacharya Mahatim Chamum Mahatim Chamum Vyudham Drupadaputrena Tava Shishyena Dhimata Vyudham Drupadaputrena Tava Shishyena Dhimata In this verse, through this verse, Duryodhan said, "Respected teacher, behold the mighty army of the sons of Pandu, so expertly arrayed for battle by your own gifted disciple, the son of Drupada. It's like you made a blunder by teaching him the warfare techniques as your disciple, and he is waging this war against you without any respect. What have you done, Acharya?" On the other hand, Arjun was highly enthusiastic to fulfill his vows that he took at the time of dishonoring, disrobing Draupadi. And you see, Arjun, whose chariot was driven by Lord himself, Lord Sri Krishna. And then Arjun all of a sudden asks him, "Baba, hey brother-in-law, O Keshava, O Madhava, would you please take this chariot, drive it toward the armies and stop somewhere in the middle so that I can view the Kauravas army, the supporters of the Kauravas army, All of them I would like to see, as they're very much interested in fighting against us. I want to take a look at them first. He was very enthusiastic. And then, to the request of Arjuna, Lord Krishna takes the chariot in the middle of the both armies and stops. How did he do that? Seno ubayor madhye ratam senayo ubayor madhye ratam stapaya mochuta सेनयो उभयोर्मध्ये रथं स्थापया मोच्युता यावदेता निरीक्षहम् यावदेता निरीक्षहम् योद्धुकामान व्यवस्थितान् योद्धुकामान अवस्थितान् कैर्मया सह योद्धव्यमास्मिन् कैर्मया सह योद्धव्यमास्मिन् रणसमुद्यमे योध्यमास्मिन् रणसमुद्यमे O Achyuta, please drive the chariot into the middle of both the armies. Stop there. Let me take a good look at them. All the kings, all the soldiers, all my relatives, cousins, and uncles, grandfathers, and gurus, all of them, they want to, fight against my army. Please stop somewhere in the middle. As Arjun requested, Lord Krishna listened to him. Although he is the Bhagwan himself, he never hesitated to serve as his charioteer. Very pleasantly, he did serve as his charioteer because he loved Arjun. Arjun was his friend, his devotee, his buddy. Arjun completely surrenders to him at some point. Before Lord Krishna teaches Bhagavad Gita, as he was highly enthusiastic, after looking at all his relatives, his pitamaha, his gurus, his uncles, their children, his cousins, and Duryodhan, Arjun actually gets very emotional. And he was trembling. He was sweating. Gandhi was slipping away from his hands. The quiver, everything, it dropped on the ground. And then he says to Lord Krishna, to his surprise, Nakankshe Vijayam Krishna, Nakankshe Vijayam Krishna, Nacharajam Sukhani cha, नकाङ्क्षे विजयं कृष्ण न काङ्क्षे विजयं कृष्ण न च राज्यं सुखानि च किं नो राज्येन गोविन्द किं भोगै जीवितेन वा किं नो राज्येन गोविन्द किं भोगै जीवितेन वा किं भोगै जीवितेन वा आ, आ, Arjun, after looking at the army very closely, he gets overwhelmed with grief, attachment, all the emotions due to the worldly consciousness. He is not in his soul consciousness. He was only conscious about his attachment to his brothers, to his pitama, his guru. He was overwhelmed. He was sweating. He says, I do not have any desire for the kingdom. I do not want to fight this war. I am not interested in Vijayam, this victory over the Kauravas. I do not want the pleasures of the kingdom in ruling the country and the people. Not at all. I do not want the kingdom at all, Govinda. A, a pleasurable depository or repository of cows who always pleases the cows. Oh Govinda, why do I actually live? There is no meaning to my life. Rather, I would die. Let them kill me. No, I do not want to fight this war. There is no use. If I fought this war, I would incur sins. In the actual words of Arjun, it does say this: O Krishna, I do not desire the victory, kingdom, or the happiness accruing it. Of what avail will be a kingdom, pleasures, or even life itself? Let's go to the shlok where actually Lord Krishna claims that he is the greatest gambler. द्यूतं द्यूतं चलयतामस्मि द्यूतं चलयतामस्मि तेजस्तेजस्विना महम् द्यूतं चलयतामस्मि तेजस्विनामहम् जयोऽस्मि व्यवसायोऽस्मि जयोऽस्मि व्यवसायोऽस्मि सत्वं सत्त्ववतामहम् जयोऽस्मि व्यवसायोऽस्मि सत्वं सत्त्ववतामहम् आ, आ, Lord Krishna actually claims his vibhuti, during the teachings of Bhagavad Gita in the 10th chapter. He says that I am the greatest gambler of all gambling. I am the brilliance of the brilliant people. I am the victory of the people who endeavor. And I am that Shakti, that energy of the strongest for them to perform their prescribed duties. I am that. Whenever I use that yutam with chalayatam, that means using deceit, a divine deceit, that gambling power, I use it for Loka Kalyan, for the welfare of the world, or for the welfare of the universe or multi-universe. That's how the truth is concealed and gambled to punish the miscreants. In his own words, as is, I am the gambling of the cheats and the splendor of the splendid. I am the victory of the victorious, the resolve of the resolute, and the virtue of the virtuous. So let's come to some of the gambling power of Shakuni first. So we talked about how Shakuni made his magical dice from his father's thigh bone, and then how he plays on behalf of Duryodhan and defeats Yudhishthira, Dharmaraj, the eldest brother of the Pandavas. Yudhishthira's weakness was gambling, like playing, dice game with his contemporaries at the time, that the prince or any other king. He would jump on the game and play for hours together. Shakuni took advantage of his weakness and proposed this dice game with Dharmaraj, Yudhishthira. That's how they play in the palace in Hastinapur. And they put initially, some money, some gold, and part of the kingdom in stake as a challenge of the gambling game, the dice game. Initially, a couple of times, Yudhishthira wins. Then afterwards, in a crafty way, Shakuni rolls the dice and shows that he won all the time. That's how he wins Pandavas, their wife Panchali, Draupadi, and their kingdom. They were forced to go on exile for 13 years into the forest. Aranyavas and Ajnatavas, 12 plus 1, 13 years. And you see, we said that Shakuni was an illusionist. Although when he rolled the dice, when it was like actually number 5 on one of the dice, he makes it to appear like 6. He does a make-believe illusion to all the people watching the game. That's how he uses his craftiness, his deceit in deceiving the Pandavas and usurping the kingdom and owning all of them, all of their gold, everything. So it was highly insulting to the Pandavas. They, they took vows at the time to break the ties of Duryodhan and also suck the blood out of Dushasan's chest. All those vows were taken at the time to take revenge on Kauravas. But Kauravas did not care at the time. Anyway, they were going to go for 13 years away from the kingdom, not to be seen by anybody. So, lot of deceitful plots to kill them also happened, but nothing succeeded in killing the Pandavas. They also tried to kill him when they were in exile, and they could not succeed. So now let's see how Lord Krishna did his tricks as part of his Yogamaya and divine deceit. So, as you know, that Shishupal was his closest relative, his aunt's son. So Shishupal, when he was a boy, he was actually born with 4 arms and 3 eyes. His mother was very concerned because he was ugly looking, according to them. But some saints suggested that he is going to be very powerful. Do not treat him like that, that he has extra appendages. They say that, actually, Akashwani says that in whosoever lap he goes and his limbs, extra limbs disappear and extra eye disappear, he's going to be killed by that person. So, Shishupal's mother and father, they invite many a number of kings to celebrate his birthday. And Lord Krishna also goes along with Balram. He was taken into the lap of each and every king, and nothing happened to him. His limbs did not disappear, the extra limbs. When it was Lord Krishna's turn, as he was placed in his lap, the extra limbs disappeared and the extra eye also disappeared. And it was obvious to his aunt that Shishupal was going to be killed by him, his closest relative. And then she begs not to kill him. Lord Krishna vows, I will not kill Shishupal. I will be pardoning him, excusing until 100 mistakes. I will tolerate all that, whatever he says, whatever mistakes he does. And whenever, if he exceeds by even one, I am going to kill him. And he sticks to that vow. When Rajasuya Yagna was performed, Shishupal was there in the court during the celebrations. And Shishupal wanted to insult Lord Krishna. And then he hurls 100, reprimands or whatever. He scolds, keeps on scolding him. And then Krishna silently endures all of them. He counts all the mistakes what Shishupal did. And he exceeded by one mistake while he was scolding Lord Krishna. And then he unleashes his Sudarshan Chakra, is a disc, chopping off his head. That's how Shishupal gets liberation, moksha. And then in the war, What did Lord Krishna do in helping Pandavas win the war over Kauravas? Couple of times, Arjun was in danger of being shot and killed by Karna. One time, Karna actually shoots with his Nagastra. And then Krishna senses that Arjuna was going to be killed, his head is going to be chopped off. He senses it, and then he presses down the chariot so that it sinks down a few inches and the arrow misses his head. Rather, it actually topples down his crown from the head. Another time, Lord Krishna uses the same technique. His omnipotency, his divine power, to have Jayadratha killed in the war. Jayadratha was a mastermind in trapping Abhimanyu, the son of Arjun, and all the Maharathis, the greatest warriors of Kaurava army. They backstab Abhimanyu and kill him. Arjun was enraged. This was very discouraging for him. It looks like he lost everything. He vowed that he would kill Jayadratha by sunset tomorrow. He fights a ferocious war against Jayadratha on that day. Arjun vows that if he fails to kill Jayadratha, he would commit suicide by jumping into fire by sunset. He fights a ferocious war, and then the time comes when the clouds were cast over the sun. Then Lord Krishna alerts Arjun, come on, shoot him, kill him with your arrow. Then actually Arjun shoots the arrow at Jayadratha. Jayadratha was protected by the Kaurava. But you see, when the clouds were up there, obscuring the sun, they all thought the sunset already happened. And then he was released from the Kaurava army who were protecting. And then Jayadratha comes in front of Arjun, thinking that Arjun failed. Arjun failed to kill him. And it was already sundown. Jayadratha thinks that Arjun is going to commit suicide. That's the end of the war, if it really happened. But it did not happen so. To that reality, what Jayadratha was thinking and the Kauravas were thinking. Lord Krishna, by his divine deceit, sends his Sudarshan Chakra to cast a shadow on the sun's rays. And it looked like the sun already set. That's how Jayadratha thinks and comes out from his protection. And then when he comes out, the sun actually sets again. The sun sets again. And then Lord Krishna says, kill him. That's how Arjun shoots him, and his chopped up head, many miles away, falls into the lap of his father, Vridakshara. And then, to his surprise, he did not know what was going on. And then he holds the head of his son and throws it away. Thereby, he also gets killed, and whatever was there nearby, everything gets burned. If the head of the Jayadratha fell in the Kurukshetra battleground, the whole army would have been burnt. That would have been the end of the war. Everything would have been in flames. See how Lord Krishna uses his divine deceit as the greatest gambler. And you see another historical fight it reminds us of Jarasandh and Bhim's fight against each other. Jarasandh was also a Maharati. Jarasandh actually born to two wives of Brihadratha. Brihadratha did not have any sons. And then a boon was given by a rishi, and he hands him a fruit. And Brihadratha takes the fruit and cuts into two halves and presents to his wives, one half to each of his wives. At the end of the 9 months, both of them give birth. A piece of Jarasandh, not alive though, there were two pieces, symmetrical ones, and the king did not know what to do, and he orders the soldiers to throw them away into the forest under a tree. That's what they did. And then those two pieces were actually seen and collected by a demoness, Jera, by name Jera. She plays with both of them in her hand, huge hands of the demoness. And then somehow she brings both the palms together with both the pieces of Jarasandh in each palm, and they get co-joined. That's what called, conjoined children, right? They get operated surgically and they get separated, conjoined ones, twins. So Jarasandha was actually connected in a symmetrical way like this. And she comes to know that the two pieces, before he became a small boy, that Jarasandha, she comes to know that these belong to the king ruling that kingdom. And she goes to the king and presents Jarasandh to his father. He was overwhelmed. He was highly pleased to have the son back alive. And you see, when the war takes place between the duel between Bhim and Jarasandh, they fight for many, many days, and then no one is getting defeated. Bhim actually dissects him into two pieces, and both the pieces come together, and Jarasandh comes alive and fights again inexhaustibly. Lord Krishna, in his divine conceited way, deceitfully suggests Bhim to place the two pieces in a reverse way, like unsymmetrically. Okay, so this would have been unsymmetrical, or this would have been unsymmetrical. So Bhim heeds the suggestion of Lord Krishna and places both the pieces in an unsymmetrical way, so that both the pieces could not come together to make Jarasandh alive again to fight against him inexhaustibly. That's how Lord Krishna uses his gambling power for the welfare of the universe in re-establishing dharma. So when it comes to Karna, where Lord Krishna uses the same technique, he suggests Arjun to shoot and kill Karna, when he was at his wheel, trying to lift it up out of the earth as it was stuck because of Bhudevi's shrap, that curse he was suffering from. Karna actually observes this deceit and he says, "Don't you use this deceit." But Lord Krishna says, "You did the same thing in killing Abhimanyu, backstabbed him. You fought an illicit attack on Abhimanyu. Don't you say all these things. It's too late. You have to be killed." That's how Arjun shoots an arrow and decapitates him. Before we close, there is another one we need to talk about. In the war, Kurukshetra war. This is about Dronacharya's death. How Dronacharya got killed. Dronacharya, a formidable warrior, highly difficult to kill him. So Lord Krishna uses the same technique, very wise technique, clever technique in getting Dronacharya killed. Many days they fight a ferocious war against Dronacharya. And they were failing to either capture or kill with any weapon. Then Lord Krishna thinks this is only the way that he can be killed. He has to renounce his weapons. Then only Dronacharya can be killed. How this can happen? What are the steps? Lord Krishna actually gives a sign to Bhim to kill a mighty elephant by name Ashwathama. Bhima kills Ashwathama and he shouts actually, so that Acharya can hear, "I have killed Ashwathama, I have killed Ashwathama," Bhima says. And Dronacharya, he was highly disappointed to hear. He was sorry to hear. He lost his mind. And he drops his weapons on the ground. And he did not want to fight the war. That was his weakness. So, Dronacharya does not believe this. And then he goes and asks Bhima, "Did you kill?" He says, "Yes, I killed Ashwathama." I mean, Bhima does not hesitate to tell a lie. So Drona was highly confident that if he asked Yudhishthira, he would tell the truth. He would believe anything what Yudhishthira says. So before Dronacharya asks Yudhishthira about the truth, Lord Krishna tells Dharmaraj that Yudhishthira to say this way, "Ashwathama hato hata naro kunjaro." Ashwathama hato hata naro kunjaro. To the suggestion, heeding the suggestion of Lord Krishna, Yudhishthira says, "Yes, Ashwathama hato hata naro kunjaraha." He mutters actually, he mumbles. Slowly he says, "Naraha." And then loudly he says, "Kunjaraha," so that Dronacharya does not suspect. Then he said, "Naro va kunjaraha." Kunjara is elephant, Nara is Ashwathama himself, the son of Drona. So herein also Lord Krishna uses his cleverness, that gambling power, that deceit in a concealed way. What's the other one actually? At the suggestion of Lord Krishna, that Pandavas gain the complete victory over Kauravas. It was on the last day when the fight was going on between Duryodhan and Bhima. A very ferocious war was going on. Bhima was also getting exhausted, and Bhima did not know what to do. Lord Krishna tells him to strike on his thighs, which is illegal in a mace fighting. They should not strike anybody below the waist. So Lord Krishna senses this. It would be highly difficult to defeat Duryodhan if he was not struck on the thighs. Lord Krishna suggests Bhim with a couple of straws to strike on his thighs. That's how Bhim takes the opportunity and all of a sudden strikes Duryodhan's thighs. That's how he gets collapsed. He collapses onto the ground. That was the end of Duryodhan. So, was there a deceit in Kurukshetra war? Post-war? Pre-war? Yes, of course, there was. Without deceit, people actually do not play with their vicious minds. Everything would be ideal without deception. So deception plays the greatest and most poisonous way in the wars for the ultimate victory. Deceit plays an important role. Yes, it does. सर्वधर्मान् परित्यज्य मामेकं शरणं व्रज अहं त्वां सर्वपापेभ्यो मोक्षयिष्यामि मा शुचः अहं त्वां सर्वपापेभ्यो मोक्षयिष्यामि मा शुचः मोक्षयिष्यामि मा शुचः If one wants to be delivered, if one does not want to come back to this sansar, going through the rigmarole of roller coaster life, experiencing all the miseries of this sansar, one needs to surrender to Lord Krishna, that Bhagavan. Unless and until you surrender, you will not be cleansed of your saddled baggage of sins. For them to be cleansed, you want to become very light as your individualized Atma. Nothing else until the Atma eclipsed. You need to surrender to him completely. Take his shelter. Leave all your duties, all your dharma, all your pathways. You come to me, then eventually you will come to my abode of peace and bliss. No doubt about this. No doubt about this. Mm, 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 I hope you learned something by watching this divine session today. Many a number of deceitful activities as part of the gambling. Without deceit, the eventual truth does not come out in the material world. These are all tricks of the material world one needs to use. That means deceit is there in the Paramatman as well. But in a divine way, though, our deceit is to gain materials, increase greediness, to gratify our senses. It's different. It is in sharp contrast to Lord Krishna's deceit that he used many times in a divine way. We all love his deceits, the divine deceits and pastimes, those leelas, don't we? So, try to understand this divine session, various topics, right from Shakuni to the defeat of Duryodhan with a strong blow on his weak thighs by Bhima at the suggestion of Lord Krishna. You go to him, you seek his shelter, and you're fine. He will take care of you. He will let you progress on your spiritual path, along with your materialistic path to sustain yourself. With this, Hari Om, Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum, Swasti. Mm-hmm.